This is how I built my wood stove, for cheap, out of cookie sheets. To build the stove, I've got 8 17 by 11 inch steel baking sheets from Dollarama, some 3/8 threaded rod, and matching nuts and wing nuts that fit on the rod, for a total cost so far of $65. I've also got some steel rivets and hinges I had laying around. You'll want to make sure that everything you use is made of steel, not aluminum or pewter metal, or that will melt on you. Let's start cutting. And some thinking. More thinking. Cutting. I cut the corners of the sheets out and bend the edges square to 90 degrees. I do this to both long sides. I then measure the height of the completed side and add 1.5 inches for the folds, mark the edge, and cut the end pieces to size. I measure, then trim the corners and fold the edges to 90 degrees to match the others. I then fold the edge back over on itself to create a slot to accept the edge of the other sides. Some test fitting. I have to trim one piece smaller to make it fit. I bend, fold, hammer, and squeeze the other end to make it match. Some more trimming and filing sharp edges. Once fitted, I mark and drill the holes for the threaded rods. I cut the rods into 4 18-inch long pieces and clean up the ends. I then drill holes in the scraps left over from the ends to use as feet for the stove. Moving on, I pick one end, mark, and cut out the opening for the door. I fold the edges inward to reinforce and smooth the opening. From another sheet, I cut a piece for the door, and again I fold the edges over to create smooth sides and a simple door. I then rivet the door to the stove with a piano hinge and some of the rivets. Then I mark out and cut the holes for the air vent. I would suggest doing this before you attach the door. Then I cut a cover with corresponding holes for the vent, which I attached with a small screw and a nut. Then I made a tab to turn the cover. In hindsight, the tab could have been made into the cover. I just riveted mine on. Then I made a latch for the door, which I riveted securely in place. Time for some more test fitting and testing the legs. Awesome. Now I'm going to build a shelf for the side of the stove for extra surface area on the top of the stove. I cut another cookie sheet and fold the edges over. Do some test fitting to see if the edges will hook on each other. Work that out. And then I make some supports, triangular, from the remaining scrap pieces. I cut triangles from the edge of the sheet and fold the cut edges over. I then rivet a hinge to the support and to the shelf. I then make and rivet brackets to accept the supports on the side of the stove. Some more test fitting. I roll up the edge of the top panel of the stove so it will hook on the folded down edge of the shelf. Then I made a custom chain from some wire that I had and attached it to the latch. I then add some fiberglass rope around the door and the top and bottom panels of the stove to help seal everything up. I got it off Amazon for $10. My camera battery died, but I also cut a piece of 3-inch pipe I had laying around and flared the end and then cut a hole in the top plate of the stove for it to slide into. That will accept the titanium chimney that I have. Then I get started on the window. I got this stove glass off of Amazon, so hopefully it works alright. It cost $20. I use the fiberglass rope to seal between the glass and the metal. I make some lightning bolt shaped brackets and round their edges to secure the glass to the side of the stove. I mark and drill holes around the glass for the brackets, and I bolt the glass in place with some bolts I had in a bin, so it can be easily replaced. They're a little bit long. I try and trim them off with the multi-tool. That doesn't work, so we'll get some different bolts eventually. I'm worried this fiberglass from Amazon might just shatter the first time that I have a fire in the stove, or just in case something happens while I'm out camping with it and the glass gets broken. I opt to make a cover out of metal that can cover the glass out of another pan that I had laying around, just in case I need to seal a hole in the side of the stove in the event of a glass failure. And with that, the only thing left to do is a cool wood stove montage. Okay, that's enough of that. Just out camping here. Gonna spend the night, get the stove put together, and test it out here. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for my next video. I'll be out camping for the weekend, hot tenting, testing out the new stove, and a couple other new things I've got. So, should be another exciting video.